All right. Well, welcome back, Freight Nation. Thank you so much for joining us today on another exciting podcast of Freight Nation, where we at Truckstop, our whole goal at Freight Nation is to bring you the super compelling stories that help you really understand more about the trucking industry, that understand it's a super big, diverse industry, and there's lots of opportunity across the board for anybody that wants to either start a career, improve their career, or even end their career inside of what I feel is one of the most dynamic industries in the world, and certainly the largest, connected to the largest industry of the world, which is supply chain. So Freight Nation is a podcast by Truckstop, and we're always excited to bring it to you. I've been super fired up every time I get to do a new episode. I get to meet a new person in the industry, a new leader in the industry, and today is really no exception. When I was asking my guests to be on today, some of the people use the word legendary. Some of the people use the word, certainly they use the word well known. So joining me today on the cast is the owner and operator of Rollin B, Miss Ingrid Brown. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you so much for joining us on Freight Nation today.
Hey, good morning. It's so great to be here. When you reached out to me, I was like, me? He's actually going to talk to me?
Come
Because you
on.
have so many, I'm serious. You have so many cool people. And I mean, people know me and that kind of thing. But to be able to do the cool, I've done tons of cool stuff. Don't anybody take that to heart or personal. It's just, I was so excited. So honestly, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm so glad that you said yes and you'd be on because in Brent's world and Brent's mind, you're cool too. And what's interesting, Freight Nation, this is what's cool. You never know how you're connected all across the board in freight. When Ingrid and I were talking about her being on, we found out, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, that we've known each other for a long time. So I started in the industry to give you a little background on Ingrid, and then I want her to kind of start to tell her story a little bit about how she got into this, which I think is a really super compelling and inspiring story starting in 1979, that she and I ran into each other when I started in this industry with Overdrive Magazine. We'll talk a little bit about that as we unroll this podcast. So thanks for joining us on Freight Nation. And Ingrid, I tell you what, let's start with okay. So back in 1979, when you were a young lady and you were a young adult or younger adult, and so you made the decision to get into trucking. Now you grew up a hardworking person on a farm. So I want you to talk a little bit about that, but talk a little bit about that sort of that work ethic on the farm and what led you into the for hire transportation industry.
I grew up, my dad and my uncle had a road construction company, and we had
A
asphalt
road
plants and
construction company?
road
Oh
construction
my gosh,
companies,
talk about
asphalt
hard.
plants.
Talk about
Yeah. I always told my daddy I was the other boy he didn't. And I loved equipment. I love dirt. How I am not playing in dirt every day, I don't know. Sometimes I go, what am I thinking? Anyway, so I mean, I can remember standing right here at the door of our 66 Butterfly Hood Peterbilt beside my daddy, and I could fit right there when I was 4, 5, 6 years old and ride right there. And so I wanted to learn to run equipment. I wanted to learn to drive. I wanted to do it all. And I could hold a flag. I am the master of holding flag and stopping traffic. If you don't stop, I'm standing in front of you. Anyway, so we have asphalt tankers, we have, low boys, we have heavy haul for moving stuff. And we moved asphalt plant because we had portables, one in Florida. I mean, it was just, they grew to be very big. Then, our dumps. We had our dump trucks. And then I got Eleanor. Eleanor, and I have the original Eleanor because she's a 79 needle nose diamond Rio. And so I just loved it. Now, I will say, when I decided to go into driving over the road was a few later years. My mother didn't speak to me for 2 years. I was supposed to have a debutante and marry the local lawyer's son. Ingrid is just I love the road. We traveled a lot into Daytona down to the other plant and down to my aunt and uncle's produce farm down there. So I grew up around that. I grew up around produce at a teeny tiny age. They'd lose me on Pompano Market and they'd be like, "Where's Ingrid?" And they'd be like, "She's down 3 shed rows down." And so I'm just that little adventurous nonstop. And at 62, I'm still that way. So that's how I got into it.
yeah. So you told me a really fun story, part of your story about how when you were talking to your mom about it, how she wasn't as excited about this as you were. So talk a little bit about, because I think this is important because when you make a decision in your life, especially as a young adult, so there's a couple aspects here. Number one, your mom's reaction to you going into trucking. Number two, the relationship between you and your mom and her influence over you.
My mom was a very strong woman as well, but she stayed at home until I was probably middle school, and she bought a florist. So, I mean, she worked crazy hours. And so, yeah, when I got into trucking, my mother pretty well was like, why are you doing this? You have the capability and the capacity to become an engineer and to go to college, and that was kind of a swerve for me to go to college and still be able to drive the truck while I'm in college. She literally was about 2 years that she didn't really wanna have any other conversation other than, "Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, good to see you." Oh, yeah, she wasn't real happy. And then she got to where she was fine with it. I kept trying to get her to go with me on the truck, and she was like she would say, "Yeah, I wanna go," and then it was like, "No." And then she ended up and got in her older years. She passed away a year ago, year and a half ago, and but she checked on me all the time, but she was a weather watcher. If we had weather optics, she would have those boys on speed dial to say, "Hey, you need to update that because I need to find out where Ingrid at." She would be so, with the weather, So, yeah, she was my biggest supporter, but it took many years. And I really didn't realize it until the last couple that she really told me that she literally not just admired me, but it was the best thing I had done for my life. It was. She named my last truck Cora maybe a month before she passed, and I always name my trucks. So she named one Driving Miss Daisy, and we called her Miss Daisy because she's like, "You're getting older, so that means you're the old woman in the back seat." And I'm like, "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate that." But yeah, that was it.
Well, that sounds like you had a wonderful relationship with your mom. So you also talked a little bit about this, and I think this is important until we. So certainly, Freight Nation, we're going to get into some of the more operational things that Ingrid does, and her inspiration, her inspiring people in the trucking industry to improve themselves and improve their businesses across the board. But I always love to talk about sort of the why of why people do what they do. So I love what you talked about how you were kind of right there all the time with your dad and your family while they were operating the business. You said you were holding the flag. You did like I always wanted to do. I don't know. That sounds like I got to operate a friend of mine's tractor a while back. I went and did a bunch of bush hogging at his place, and because I called him up and said one of my bucket list things is to run a tractor and bush hog, and he looked at me, Ingrid, so funny. He's like, "Bush hog?" I go, "Look, I think it's the coolest thing in the world." I mean, a giant tractor in a big field, using that big old thing that's just tearing everything up and cutting stuff down. I said, "It sounds like a blast." He goes, "You can come down anytime and do that." So, and I did. I did it for 4 hours one afternoon. It was so much fun. My point though is that I know it's like people look at me and go, "Bush hogging?" I go, "Oh my gosh, absolutely." And I love construction stuff too.
It's therapeutic.
Those people that are bent to do things that are action oriented, things that are with their hands, things that are with their feet. And look, we're always using our brain, okay? There's nothing not brain functional or not brain operating when you're doing whatever you're doing out there. And so it just depends on the application of which you want to do it. So that's exciting. So you were working with your dad for a long time. And so tell me a little bit about, you talked a little bit about that, about right there with him, all the way. So tell me about, importantly, your relationship with your dad and how that inspired you as well.
I was daddy's girl. My daddy was very quiet and very quiet. And my daddy was a person that you would never even realize that he was in the business of the Brown Brothers construction. And but he was the one on the ground, and my uncle was, they split it that way. And my uncle was the office and the operation. I mean, that side. But daddy was the one on the ground. And my daddy was a character, of course. He was the guy that you'd find when he passed away. We found like 7 sticks of dynamite in his toolbox on his pickup. Because he would go across the road at like 5:30 in the morning, and he'd set a charge off so they could work the rock, work the quarry. And it'd be like you'd stand at the truck shop, and all the trucks, well, part of the trucks around could fit there. And and you hear it go on the top of the building and go on top of I'm not doing that again. On top of the building, and it'd be like, "Well, DT's back at blasting, dynamite this morning." And he'd come walking in like, "Open eye, I mean,
Say BT or DT?
DT.
DT. Is that your dad's name?
That's my dad's no, that's his name. His name was DeWitt Talmadge, and he's like, "Don't even Deacon, Deacon." And this is how close we are. When I was born, Daddy wasn't there, and he came in and he didn't like my name. So he told my mama he didn't like Ingrid. It was just a little difficult for everybody. So my daddy calls me Shitbird. From the day I was born to the day he passed, my daddy called me Shitbird. I mean, it didn't matter where we were. You could be at church and my daddy would say, "Shitbird."
You're saying
Sh
SHIPBRID. No.
No,
Oh, with a T.
with the T. So, yeah, so, stuff was written to me, "Shitbird." He'd label me, "Oh, absolutely way, absolutely way." And he was just quiet about it, I was like, "Hey, Shitbird, Shitbird, you know better." So it was like, it just was that thing, he was one that he told you one time, and he expected you to grasp it, and you knew it. So you learned real quick that your learning had to be solid. You had to be that one time and done. I mean, of course, he'd come back if you needed something, but he was very stringent on making sure that you were educated. And he did it in the means that he wanted you to succeed, even though you couldn't see that part at a younger age. Sometimes in the older age. I could come in after he fell out of a track hoe and hit his head. So he was had a lot of problems since '08, and he passed in 15. And I could come in and sit down and go, "Okay, daddy, my truck's doing this, 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 and this." And he was in assisted living, and he could still, even though he couldn't communicate, he could still come off and communicate about a truck. And after that, you could ask him what he wanted to eat. And there was no verbalization. So he was so his heart was into trucks and machinery and all of this. So my dad was my other biggest supporter, and I was just blessed. I mean, I had a childhood and livelihood that so many people hate to say this, but you missed out if you didn't. It was really cool, and I'm sitting here today because of it.
Yeah, as we get older and we look back on it, we see the things that were of true value to us. And that time with your dad, even though he gave you a very unique nickname, and even the advice from your mother, the sort of can-do part of your dad and the advice from your mother, but they both still obviously had great impact. I like to set those things up, Ingrid, talk about what makes somebody who they are, because I think the Freight Nation listeners and watchers really appreciate that because a lot of times people go, well, that couldn't be me or I couldn't do that, or that I can't relate to that person. And I disagree. I think that when you really dig in, at the heart of all of us is a desire just to create significance and understand what's a part of what our purpose in life is. And so I love that you brought that out and you talked about your mom and you talked about your dad, you talked about the business, you talked about your dad working with your uncle and all the things that went into it. And that's what all of that sort of foundation is what launched you into your transportation career. Because all of that had to build you. That was what you kind of drew on. Even as you say, when you used to be able to go back to your dad and ask him questions about the mechanical parts of your truck or what's going on and things that he still sharp as a tack, even though I love this. He fell off a track hoe and busted his head. That's legendary, right?
Yeah, he was in ICU for like 5 months. I mean, he lost all motor skills, he lost his speech, everything, and then he got back where he could communicate, but we still had to make sure he had 24-hour care, and I mean, he was sharp as a tack. It's just he just couldn't tell you about it a lot of times, but yeah, it was a thing. Brent, and I'll say this, it gave me my foundation and tools, but I honestly believe that everybody's situation in their life gives them tools that brings them as an equal to me, even though I had a hands-on situation with it. Because I had to make the choice to go into transportation and supply chain. And when I did that, I didn't have anybody. They were in construction. They were in a central location. They didn't deal with the supply chain. They helped with providing for the supply chain. So I basically started out the same place as most everybody in some point or way. And so I had to find my way into doing that. And in saying that, I've done nothing up to this day that nobody can do, that they can't do at all. I'm not anything special because of all the daddy in the past. I'm not anything special for what I've done. I'm just Ingrid. And there's not anything I do today that any man and woman can't do and get done if they just want to. They just got to want to and apply themselves and find out, where do you find it?
I love that. I'm just Ingrid. One of the greatest quotes, and I use this all the time in Freight Nation. This is a super cool quote. You can go out and look it up on the internet. It's Steve Jobs, the guy that created Apple, computing and all that stuff. And he's a young man. He's bearded. It's when he was still just kind of like starting out. So he's like, oh, even kind of overweight. He's wearing this old beat up shirt. And he said, he said, as soon as you figure out in life that everything that has been created was created by nobody that's any smarter or different than you, then that's the moment in your life where you realize you can do the same thing. All the things that have been created by just, by the way, there are people that have different talents and different skills. I realize that, but you bring your talent and skill into it and you can create things too, because as soon as you figure that out, it's important. All right. So had this foundation, you spun into Rollin B. Now you've had a fun time. By the way, I want to make sure I point this out too. You're a native of Boone, North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
I love me some Boone, North Carolina, because one of my favorite people of all time, a gentleman named Ed Hare, who helped me so much when I was a young man, was from Boone. And now I was in Charlotte when I got to meet him. He was actually the business partner of a guy I became business partners with, but he gave me such sage advice and wisdom. And Ed Hare will, if I ever show all of my office, I have a little rabbit that he gave me. He gave me on my wedding day. And so I got this package in the mail. It's a rabbit. And I call him and I go, Ed, thanks a lot, but what's the rabbit for, like fertility or something? And he goes, Brent, my last name is Hare. So Boone,
And is the age of my brother, and it's crazy. This is part of there is nothing in the supply chain and logistics and trucking that isn't connected somewhere. We're finding this out. So, yes, Boone, and if other people don't know that's watching this, Appalachian State University, where like Eric Church comes up, Eric's from right there, Luke Holmes, Doc Watson, all these, but Appalachian State University, that most people are like, you do college football, you know who that is.
yeah,
But
they beat Michigan.
yep,
Yeah,
that's home. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
that is super exciting. All right, so let's roll into your career. Let's go into the beginning of your career. So you started out as driving a truck when there were very, very few people of your gendered persuasion, a female, in this industry. And so talk a little bit about what were some of the things that you might have had perceptions on that you had to overcome or other people had to overcome, and then how you created your initial success. And then I want to go into kind of how you rolled into, believe it or not, how about this, Freight Nation? She went to brokerage school just to understand brokers in the market. But that's incredibly brilliant. Talk a little bit about that, and I want to talk about kind of where you are today. Then I want to talk about some inspirational things on just advice to other people in the industry. So let's talk about when you started out. Tell the Freight Nation watchers and listeners about some of the things that you had to overcome perception wise, and others had to overcome perception wise.
This is where I feel like I did have a little bit of a leg up. And this is where, when I started out, this is where I take all of that from growing up in the construction company to coming out on the road, being a woman, and there being 0% ratings of women. I mean, a six that I knew that ran from the Carolinas to California for years would leave notes at truck stops for each other of where we were, or leave a package or whatever, because there were only six of us that were crossing the country as solo independent women. And but what I bring with this is I came up in a man's world in the construction. There were no females in the construction in daddy's business. Now I had three first cousins and my uncles and my oldest sister, but she was like gone to college when I was 8. But I can remember they used to try the deal of flagging in bikinis. That didn't last long because daddy and my uncle nipped
How
that
about,
one in the
how about,
bud.
how about, how about, how about, how about,
Tell you that.
You were flagging bikinis.
And they did. I didn't. I knew better because they got in trouble.
Oh my gosh. Were they doing that to, like, get some sun? Or were they I mean, like, that's a giant distraction.
It's because nobody would stop at the traffic. It was a
Uh,
busy road, and they
maybe the
kept having
title of
people.
this podcast, "Flagging in Bikini."
Okay, they
I
were
love it.
doing a government job,
Alright.
and a government job, and the traffic wouldn't stop on this 4 lane. Yeah, I have to. Anyway, so the traffic wouldn't stop, and people kept running the stop signs. So we know how to get their attention. So that's what two of my cousins did. My sister and my cousin did, and I'm like, yeah. So
That
you might
is
not want to put
funny.
this on there, but
Uh-huh. Well,
anyway,
hey, it was
you
the statute of
they didn't.
limitations is way past. No one's gonna
Thanks. Yeah. Well, and the thing is they only did it once, and they never got involved in the company like equipment and out of that. They did some office stuff and that stuff, but that was it. But what I was trying to get at before I just squirrel and ADHD kicked in, but is I brought with me the fact that I know who taught me, and I'm not scared to ask for help. I know to ask the guys. I know even today I would do it, which I just did it yesterday morning when I unloaded over on produce. Is I had a guy jump out and spot for me. Everybody goes, "Why do you have somebody spot? You've been driving for 45 years." No, 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 no. There's two reasons. One, it's an education thing. One is a safety thing. It's safety so that I'm protected, and it's an education thing to get people to quit using their phones and videoing people doing stuff. And if they run into something, they could have been standing out there helping to prevent it. So it's an education to ask for help. It's okay. I can go to a truck beside of me and say, "Hey, sir, hey, ma'am, can I get you to stand out here and spot me on this? I may not need you. Don't tell everybody that. Freight Nation, don't blurb my secret because I may not need you, okay? But I watch it so much that people sit in their truck and they don't communicate in this industry as drivers. They don't watch out for one another, but they want to scream, nobody watches out. We need to watch out for others. If you start utilizing them into helping you, you'll find there'll be more interaction and more observance and helping one another. But you just kind of use a little reverse psychology in the sense of, will you help me? And they people love to be needed. People love to help. And all I can ask is if they pay that forward. And I tell them that every single time. I almost don't back into any dock that I don't find somebody just for this reason. I can get in them. I have no problem with it. But I mean, I have ones,
well,
of course we
maybe
all do.
maybe they
But
see something you don't see. Yeah, maybe they see so
you
that
know,
yeah, sure.
exactly. I mean, you
No.
can't get any safer than that. So you're covering all your bases, but at the same time, you're utilizing. I had that with all of the guys. Who do you think trained me? It was every man that crossed my path in 48 states that would train me on helping on logbooks, helping on any kind of. I mean, I was a rookie. I'm still a rookie, but I was a rookie just green as could be in the trucking long haul in that whole new this was a whole new segment of my life. So I wasn't scared to ask for help. I never ever in my life have had any guy that has ever approached me in a negative way or any way belittle, put me down, anything like that. I have never. All I've ever had is, "I'm sorry I can't help you," or the 99% of the answer is, "Sure, what can I do?" Or I've had them walk up and say, "Hey, I had a flatbed for 7 years. Hey, I saw how you start and you tarp that or chain that. Let me give you a little bit of just a pointer here." And they'll do that, but that's because they feel like they're comfortable in walking up to you and saying something. So drivers getting involved in working with each other, you get other people more comfortable going to offer or going to ask. And that's what we've lost. And there's a disconnect in that today, be it because of a lot of things. But it's something that a lot of people, and I hope anybody watching this really thinks about. We want it like it used to be in our old days of sitting around a round table at the truck stop or standing around in a truck stop talking and sharing stories. The only way we're going to get it there is to create it there. It will never be there on its own. We have to create it. So that's what I can say that I brought from the past is I didn't have that. So I'm trying to learn that I did have the skill set of having all the guys, and I knew our guys never belittled me. They never, whatever. Being the owner's daughter did not stop them from saying no or asking me if I was a big dummy at times. But at the same time, I did learn to step out of that. I got in a really uncomfortable zone though when I started because it's a whole new world. But it happened really quick. It happened real quick. Now I'm working with 53-foot trailers and I'm 2,500 miles from home and I don't have that quick fix situation and to be able to walk away from it and come back to it. Now it's you got to fix it as it happens. So I learned throughout the years and it's brought me up to now. I can step away might be for the 60 seconds or an hour and go back to it if it's a problem. I do have a communication where we didn't back then that I can reach up to that. So it comes back to being, it was different, but it was the same. The only thing that had to change was me. I had to make that difference. And I'm the one that had to make the change because if I didn't, it wasn't going to work and it wasn't going to. It's the same today. If I don't make the change and I don't make the choice, it's not going to happen for me if I don't take action for it. So that all goes into exactly where I'm at in the way I operate from back then to today.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, Freight Nation. So I hope you were listening closely and watching closely because she just gave you a ton of sage advice of how to work through this, whether you're male or female or male, it doesn't matter. The thing to do is to ask for help when needed. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. It oftentimes creates a relationship and it allows other people to feel like they're useful and helping you. But it also helps keep you. And you talked about this, Ingrid. You said you can't be safe enough. And so super important about safety because this whole industry is measured on safety. Our governing body, the FMCSA, is predominantly all about the safety of this industry, the safety of the consumer, the passenger, the citizenry on the road, and the safety of the trucks. Super important. And I love this how you said that by communicating, you're able to watch out for one another. That's super great. And then at the phrase of, hey, just the phrase of will you help me? I do this with my kids. I teach my kids all the time. I go, okay, if you need something from somebody, go up and the first thing you need to say is, hey, I need your help. And you'd be surprised because people want, you said it. You said people want to be helpful. Here's the other thing, Freight Nation. I hope you're paying attention to this. Ingrid said something else that was super, super, super wise, a super great piece of advice. She said, the only person that can change her is heard. So the only person that Freight Nation that can change you is you. You have to make up the mind that you're going to change yourself in doing something in order to improve what you're doing or create more safety in what you're doing, and then to take action on it. Ingrid, I thought that was fantastic. And I love how you brought it all the way back to the story of working with your dad and your uncle and your cousins and your family and everybody else and the girls in the bikinis, all the way back to that of just accepting each other and taking advice and counsel to grow, to learn, grow. Super, super important for a nation. Great, great. I like to call those pro tips, Ingrid, in this. And so we get these across the board. This is why I love to have great people like yourself on to give that advice to those that need to be reminded of it or those that maybe have never heard it. That's super important. All right, you move forward. Now, 45 years is a long time. You've been doing this for 45 years, still doing it after 45 years. So I want you to talk a little bit about how, as you changed your career a little bit, your application of how you're doing your trucking in it because of a physical issue, and then about how I want you to talk a little bit about how you went to broker school, and then let's talk about how you're involved in helping other females see an opportunity out there through women in trucking as a foundational member. of women in trucking when it started back in the early 2000s. Talk a little bit about where your operation is today and then why you went to broker school. Then let's finish with women in trucking.
Really fast. I went through, and I'm very diversified. Okay. I own my own company, independent. And so, I mean, I own flatbed. I pulled cows. I own cows. And I just wanted everything but a car hauler. I'll throw this in here really quick. Did not want to haul a car hauler because that meant I had to get out of a window of a car on the top deck. Two things were going to happen. I'm either going to land on my head or either my fanny is going to get stuck in the window. So I wasn't even gonna attempt either one. No, I'm not into falling off a height, and I don't want to get stuck in a window on. So, I decided when I in 2008, 2007, I started thinking about it, and I thought, I want to go and find out all the back stuff and the back office and all of the software and all the new stuff coming out that the brokers have because I was hauling direct. I don't like load boards. So I love my direct freight. Anybody out there with refrigerated direct freight, call me. Anyway, sorry, that was a plug. Anyway, so I went to a college and I said, sign me up. So everybody went, you just spent thousands of dollars to go to broker school and your time off. And so you're gonna be a broker. And I had like companies coming at me, offering me jobs to be a broker. And I'm like, I don't want no, 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 no. I don't want any of that. I want the software that I got from it. I want the education I got from it. And I want the time spent that I got to do it. So that was how I went to broker school. And I have kept up with that. I have made sure to keep myself engaged, active on the broker side. Although I'm not brokering, I could sit down at a broker desk and go to brokering today if I wanted to. I feel confident enough in that because I've put myself with that education and I've kept it current. So from there, of course, I was still driving. So from there, I went back in or I stayed in pulling refrigerated freight. I love produce. I'm a produce guru of quality. I should be an inspector by now because I'm going to turn stuff down on a pallet. And well, I just did that in Salinas this past week. They pulled a pallet out and I was like, that's not going to go. And, it's just, learning every type of produce that we go from berries to, anything. So I love that stuff. I think that's a big thing of my success is I love trucking so much. And I always say, I love to truck. I don't have to. And so I went from there and all through this, I started showing trucks back in like 2001-ish. I was around in the course of 99 up to that point. And then I started, and that's when we come into play here.
That's where we met. That's right. Tell them about that. That was a fun day. Yeah.
Yeah, well, throw that in there, and then I'll get up to where we're at now. Yeah, it's I was, showing at the Great American Truck Show down in Dallas, Texas, which is GATS, and it's owned by Randall Raleigh, which is that owns Overdrive. So, yeah, I was, like, showing down there all the time, and then I became a judge for the Overdrive Pride and Polish, and that would have been in 2014. So I judged until our last year, 19 was our last year, and one of my best friends, who I call my brother, is Randy Schwarzenberg, which you worked with Randy.
Roz, I know this Roz room.
And I worked with Randy when he was a trucker buddy. And so I got myself involved because I love charity. I'm the one that started the Special Olympics Challenge of the Genders at the Dallas Truck Show. I'm actually the creator. That's me. They used to call me Half Pint. And that was in '03. So, I got involved with a lot of charitable things and love the philanthropist side of the industry and the people in this industry. So, giving it back. So, we go forward. 2017, I did the convoy of hay where the wildfires took out Kansas and Oklahoma. And I was nominated for Citizen Driver of the Award for T8 Petro. And the Petro in Oklahoma City is rebranded as the Ingrid Brown Petro Travel Stop.
Oh, no way.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that. What?
Yeah. I just got there this week and I was like, look, that's my name up there, you know. And then, we did that. And it's like I've never gone after everything that's happened to me. God has put everything that's happened to me in my life. And for that reason, I'll never know. I just have to continue doing what he wants me to do. So in the time frame, I was contacted by Ellen Boyd, Women in Trucking, and asked to do a video reel for FMCSA. This was it was at Dallas in 2018. So they contacted me later and asked me if I would be the commercial motor vehicle, FMCSA commercial motor vehicle voice and face of safety. And I was like, and I'm like, "Y'all really understand I have a hillbilly accent, and you aren't gonna know whether shitbird's gonna come out of my mouth or what. Are you Do you wanna think about this for a minute?" And anyway, I took my truck and trailer, to DC and filmed for 2 days, and then they flew out to Michigan and anyway, they did PSAs and billboards and TV stuff. Anyway, so I did that, and so women in trucking's been a huge part of my life. I was sitting in the hallway in Dallas whenever the whole topic came up, and Ellen and Lee Foxall and me, and I think Elizabeth was there, a couple more. And so in 2000, that was 2003, 2004. So when Ellen kicked it off in '07, of course, I was on board 1000%. I became one of the driver advisories in '09, so which put me to where I sat on the interior team for Peterbilt, worked with the engineers there. You can tell I'm a big Peterbilt girl.
I see
And, that's
Peterbilt back
all my
there, yeah.
trucks but one. Yeah, that's what I order is all but one. And fast forward in 2015, I was on the inaugural image team, and we mentor women of the industry, whether you're coming in, what's going on, or if you're deciding or you don't know what to do with your life or a career, what do you wanna do? So, I ended up and this year, I was awarded a board of directors position, so I sit on the Women in Trucking board of directors. It has been a whirlwind of nothing but blessings and things in my life that I look at sometimes and say, I don't deserve this because I'm no different than anybody else. Everybody deserves this. You see a billboard, just cover my face up and put 3.7 million people's face up there because they are the trucking industry. They are the supply chain. And brokers, you're going to get mad at me when I say this, but just get over yourselves because it's like this. If it wasn't for a truck driver or a truck, you wouldn't have a job. The only people that literally has to have the supply chain to keep the country running is a consumer, a manufacturer, and a truck. Because consumer, we have to have our goods. We found that out in 2020, 2021. The manufacturer has to make what we have, whether it's toilet paper or baby formula, and the truck can get it to anywhere. You might have to walk down to the end of the street to get it. So they become the receiver at that. It Everything else makes the industry fluent, makes it happen. Love all y'all. I'm grateful all y'all. And many people I have in this country that I know that, you know, but I think that where my heart lies between the driver side and a shipper side. Those are the ones that I really have so deep in me that I understand 100%. The struggles of a shipper, the concerns of whether that freight is quality or whether it gets where it's going to make sure the consumer can have it. I think down to the nuts and bolts of it takes me back 45 years ago because that's what we really worked and strived for. Making sure we service that shipper to service that consumer on the other end. So I think that's where it is. I love my board of directors. I'm also on the driver committee for St. Christopher's Charity Fund.
Know it well, sure.
I did have to, I'm throwing all this at you. I did have to come out of the truck for 6 months last year.
This is how life throws you a curveball, but you've adjusted to it, which I thought was brilliant. Talk a little bit about that.
I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm going to sit here and tell you, I literally cried for days and weeks because I didn't know what to do. 2017, I was diagnosed with melanoma, stage 2. So I had surgeries. My grandfather passed with it. My brother was diagnosed 6 months after I was, and that's what my mother passed with a year and a half ago. Well, we found it's genetic. So it's not like it's because Ingrid, you shouldn't have been out in a bikini in the sun. So I was all in the stop sign. Anyway, so I had to have a quarter of my throat out in 2018. I had a couple small ones. August last year, I was coming out of Washington and I found a lymph node. Ended up, I got back to my oncologist. I had a broke rib. And I was like, I knew I was hurting, but I figured I jumped out of the back of the trailer and I just pulled a muscle or something. Nope, nope. I had between it was just crazy. So I'm still in treatment and they did let me come back to work after 6 months. I sold my truck and I deactivated my authority and I came to work for an amazing company out of Parker, Arkansas called Blackjack Express LLC. They're a heavy haul company and do a lot of specialized direct freight hauls. And amazing. Well, they have one reefer that they had helped a driver out that wasn't able to haul the heavy haul anymore, and he was no longer with them. And they contacted me, I contacted them, and I'm back into basically running it. Just they give me the reign of you know where I want to run, how I want to run. I do take off to go get my infusions. They work with me on all that. This is the thing: is drivers have to think about finding a company that works with them. You got to catch the word with because you can't work for them. I mean, they can't work for you. Everybody has to work together with you. You have to work with them. So having all of that situated before you get in the truck and leave their yard is a great idea. On the other side, if it's a broker, shipper, or an employee, if it's a carrier, you got to realize, look at this as what would you do if this was you on the driver's side? Do they fit your what you need? Are you able to let them off for 4 days to go get an infusion and then 2 days to kind of, well, 3 or 4 to recover from that infusion? And you got to look in the time frame in between. So I didn't know what I was going to do, honestly, when I came off that 6 months. And I thought, well, here's where the broker school is actually going to work. Now I have my reason and my answer why I went to broker school. I had someone come to me and I hauled for them Wix Filters, WLA at a Mount Airy, who stayed friends since the mid 90s. And they came to me and said, come work in the office until you figure out and you have a job. So I worked up to that point, and I'm like, I'm able to go back on the road. That's my heart. And I had struggled with it at first and thought, maybe since I'm 62, this is where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I need to be out of the truck. What type of thing? The thing was, I didn't need to panic at all because there's so many facets to this industry. It was unreal. Could have gone to safety. I could have gone to brokerage. I could have gone to maintenance. So many things in so many places. But once again, I had to make sure I made the choice because I had to take care of me to figure out where me needed to be before anybody else could take me or offer me that or whatever. So I'm happy to be back in the truck. I'm loving the company driver side here. They're amazing. And I'm learning even more. I mean, now I'm learning about the specialized stuff of heavy haul and oversize and I still raise my eyes. Yeah, exactly. So it's I'm still growing in the industry. Now let me tell you, everybody needs to think, and I don't care if you sit in the seat of a truck, you sit where you're at, or you sit in a shipper's office or a broker's office. You need to think about when life throws you a curve that you can't do nothing about. I still have a couple things going on that I don't know what's going to happen. They in the office know exactly what's going on every minute, all the time. I don't know. We may be looking that I'm back out of the truck in 6 months. We may be looking that I'm still here when I'm 82, and y'all are still going, "How are you still doing this, you old woman?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I got this." But everybody needs to look at a plan. Call it a plan B, call it a backup plan, call it a semi-retirement plan, because none of us know what life has in store. But there is an option for every single person. There's not giving up isn't an option. Saying I can't is not an option. There is something out here, and find the people that believe in this as much as you and I do, and let them help you. Ask for help. We go back to 45 years ago when it was, "Hey, I need some help. Will you help?"
Ingrid, thank you so much for those inspiring words. I love that. Life is going to, as you said, throw you some curveballs. It's how you adjust to it. It kind of goes back to your point about taking action, making a plan and taking action. And this is why I wanted to start Freight Nation, which was there's so many stories and there's so many different aspects of opportunity inside of transportation for you to extend your career, continue your career, start your career, enhance your career across the board. And that's the beautiful thing about transportation and supply chain is there's a spot for you no matter what you want to do. And obviously, Ingrid, the industry is so much better since you started out and stayed at it for these 45 years and you continue on. Thank you so much for your inspiring words and story today. Freight Nation, I know you took a lot away from this because you couldn't not take a lot away from it because Ingrid's story and her life and her grit is undeniable and inspirational. Ingrid, thank you so much for sharing your story with Freight Nation.
Thank you for having me. I know I talk too much sometimes, and it's like I get to going, and it's like I have such passion that I feel it coming out of my pores, and it just comes out my mouth. But thank you for having me. This has been amazing. This has been great, and I can't wait to see you at the Women in Trucking Accelerant Conference in November in Dallas.
They're every year, yeah.
Yes, I know. I get to see you this year too. So I didn't have time, but just to say hi last year. But this year, we're going to sit down and say hello better. So I can't wait to see you. Thank you.
Ingrid, thank you so much. For Freight Nation, that is a wrap. I know you took a bunch away from this. Thank you for giving us your time, your effort, and your energy. I know there's a lot of places you can take them. We hope that every time you watch a Freight Nation podcast, that it's a benefit to you, your business, and your life. And Freight Nation, as we like to say, work hard, be kind, and stay humble. Thanks a lot, Freight Nation. We'll catch you on the next podcast. On behalf of the Truckstop team, thanks for listening to this episode of Freight Nation. To find out more about the show, head to truckstop.com/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until then, keep on trucking and exploring the open roads with Freight Nation, a trucking podcast.